Welcome to my vlogs. This is episode 39, and I thought I would do a review of the Northern Travserse, and instead of just doing it on my own, I've got a guest. So this is Andy Hewitt. So welcome, Andy. Met Andy the night before the race, and we spent the first 40 hours together, didn't we, pretty well, of the race. So just maybe introduce yourself a little bit, Andy, for those who obviously don't know you.
So, as you know, my name is Andy Hewitt. I'm from Australia. I've done a few ultras in Australia and a few around the world, and Northern Travserse was a bit of a target race for me, and so I was very pleased to be able to get there, and it was great to be able to share part of the journey with John. I really enjoyed the outing. Yeah,
we thought for this we would just sort of give a little bit of review of the race, but the Northern Travserse wasn't just the only race that you were coming over to do, was it? And it was funny that the night before people are talking about different races they did, and Andy drops in that after the Northern Travserse he's also doing the Cape Wrath 8-day ultra, and there was a definitely intake of breath. So people thought, wow. So how did that go?
Well, not quite to plan. And as I said beforehand, hold the accolades until I've actually completed the pair of the races, and unfortunately I didn't complete it. It's still underway. I pulled up with a bit of an injury after day 2 and decided that it was prudent to pull out and head home. So, and unfortunate, but I got to see part of the course and some of the organisation, and I have to say I'm very impressed, and I would highly recommend it for anybody that wants to see the Highlands and have a huge adventure, because it's going to be a big adventure for a lot of people. Yeah,
and it was always the Northern Travserse was the priority, wasn't it? In the sense of that was the main reason you came over.
And that was my. I had already booked in the Northern Travserse and had all my plans arranged pretty much, and then I discovered that the Cape Wrath sort of slotted in immediately afterwards, and I thought, well, there's a narrow window of opportunity there. It would be really nice to be able to do both. Yeah. Probably a bit greedy, but I thought, I'm travelling all that way around the world. In for a penny, in for a pound, as they say, so I entered it, and here I am.
Yeah, and I think if given the state of how well you felt after the Northern Travserse, if you hadn't have done it, I think you would have regretted it, wouldn't you? Because you certainly were you looked in good enough shape to do it.
Yeah, I felt great. Yeah. I come through Northern Travserse. I finished strongly, had no blisters, had no ankle swelling. Had no leg soreness. I got up to the Cape Wrath, and the first day I ran conservatively but felt good. A little bit of a twinge in my shin, which is a bit of an indication of what was to come, but I thought that would be manageable. But yeah, I felt good. So if I hadn't entered, I would have been disappointed that I hadn't at least given it a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, and you certainly won't. You won't die.
No, I won't die wondering.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we thought for this week, I've just got 5 headings or 5 lessons, reviews that I thought for myself, and we'll sort of chat them through. And the first one I wrote down was that I really enjoyed the challenge. I think for me, this was a step up. It was the furthest I've ever done. I've never really done a multi-day race over for me in the end 4 days. And so it was all that I wanted it to be. It was an epic challenge. It was tough. It was dealing with the sleep deprivation and various things, the route. I'd recce'd the whole route, so I knew what I was in for, and I just really relished the challenge and being part of the race. So it was certainly ticked all the boxes for me, and just I look back now with real pride that I did it and I was able to complete it. So but I was interested for you, Andy. Obviously you came from Australia, so what attracted you to come over and do a race like the Northern Travserse?
For me, it ticked all the boxes. I love point-to-point races. I love going on a journey. I love going on courses that are actually established trails, and so they're a course that people are going to navigate anyway, or that you might navigate yourself. And I love the fact that it was an epic nature, and the fact that you're going from one coast to the other, actually crossing the whole country. It's just, it just, as I said, ticked all the boxes. And as soon as I heard about it, I wanted to come in 2016, but I couldn't make it. So as soon as the entries opened, I was in, and here I am.
Yeah. And you found the same, didn't you?
It was great.
All that you wanted it to be, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was truly epic. And really challenging, but really rewarding. And you're going through so many different, different regions, different ecosystems, farmlands, national parks, roads, trails, bogs, plenty of bogs, climbing, descending. It just had it all. It was great. Yeah.
And I think weather-wise, we were pretty fortunate when it was dry all the days. The first night was pretty miserable, wasn't it? It rained we left Patterdale about 11:30, and it rained pretty well the whole night, didn't it? So that was. But after that, it was it was fine, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, the second thing I put down was to reflect on was the navigation. Now, I had recce'd the whole course pretty well, and you hadn't set a foot on it.
Yeah.
So how did you find the navigation and finding your way?
I found parts of it challenging. As I said on the course, I've got lazy over the years relying on courses that have been marked, and I grew up with a map and a compass, so I know how to use them, but I've become very reliant on following a marked course, I must admit, and that we get a bit spoilt in Australia in that regard. But having said that, the nav that we had, I had it on my watch, and I had it on a GPS, and then we had really good maps. So the combination, and then working in a bit of a team in a few situations, we made a few hiccups, but overall, it was good. We got there, which is the main thing. Yeah,
I would say for me, I made probably 3 mistakes, and they were all at night when I was tired.
Yeah.
The first one when we were together, and there was 4 of us that were running most of that 40 hours. And Russ and Rob were a little bit behind, and we pushed on. And I'd said to Andy a couple of times on the recce's, I found that if you're on a good path, then watch out, because normally it's the wrong one after a while. And that's exactly what happened. We were running down the bit where you have to cut over to the old mine and that little bridge, and we were chatting away. We were feeling strong, weren't we? It was probably about 11 at night, so 10:30 at night, so it was dark by then, and you noticed, I think we're off the line. So we had to trudge back up, that we just had this strong run down, and then we didn't go far enough, did we? And we messed around, and then Rob and Russ, who were behind us, were now ahead of us, and we could see their head torches on the other side. So that was probably the worst one, and I'll put it on the screen so you can see where we went. And then I made a couple of other silly mistakes. One in a Littlebeck Woods after you guys had gone on, and I needed to sleep, and I slept in that stone hut. And I remember from the recce that you had to go down, rather than go into the car park. But it was too early, so I went down, and I went down about 15 minutes before I realised I was off, and to come all the way back again. So that was another half an hour, and it was annoying because I just had a little sleep, and it was almost as if I'd wasted that time. And then the final one for me was when that last moorland before you get to Hawkster, and I was with a guy called Phil, and he was going well. He pushed on. My feet were getting quite sore by then, and I lost the trail, and I had to use a compass to get back on. And I got on this path, great, and then it took me to the road, and I got to the road, and there was a sign saying Robin Hood's Bay 2 miles, and I still had 7 miles to go. And I thought, it's not, obviously I can't go down the road, I'll be disqualified, so I had to trudge back over. So they were my 3, I think, worst ones, and all of them were at night when I was tired, which has its own lesson, isn't it?
That more in even the daytime, several of us had trouble with. I zigzagged through that because the path just kept disappearing into the shrubs, and you couldn't really see where you were going because of the rise. You could take a bit of a bearing, but a lot of us spent a lot of time traversing that paddock.
And then when you finally get through it, you've got that little lane down, which is just awful, isn't it? Horrible. Yeah, it's like a path that's been ploughed up on purpose, isn't it, with rocks and anyway,
I passed poor Jen Scotney going down there. She had really sore feet, and she was almost going down sideways because it was so rough and it was so broken up.
My feet were really sore underneath by then, so I was just gingerly making my way down. Okay, so navigation, I would say generally it's pretty straightforward, but you have to concentrate, don't you? And it's easy just to, as I said, you get on a good path and you think, I'm fine now, and then you realise that you need to keep your wits about you. And I think particularly at night, and that's why I was really grateful that first night, the 4 of us together were able to help each other, because when I did that in the recce in beautiful sunshine, I made a real mess of it. So I was very grateful there was 4 of us making the decisions, and it was pretty straightforward to Angel Tard.
It was
far more than it was on my recce, so that was good. Okay, the next one I've put down to think about is pacing. Now, as you know, I had a very definite plan, and which you'd seen on my blog and you'd sort of had a look at as well, and it was to get me in under 72 hours. And I thought that was always going to be challenging, but I did feel it was realistic. I'm not quite sure now. But we kept to it pretty well all the way to Keld. We were there under 36 hours. We were half an hour under my 72-hour schedule. And I was, feeling comfortable. I didn't feel as though I was too fatigued, and feel quite happy. But the two factors for me that really affected it was, one, blisters on my feet, and had to deal with those. But the other one was sleep. I planned to have an hour and a half at Kirby Stephen. I had probably about an hour, and then I just planned to have 2 20-minute sleeps at Richmond and lying in. And with my eyesight, I get this lazy eye, so I was seeing double, and I just knew I needed more sleep. So the pacing for me, once I got to Richmond, I made the decision that I still had plenty of time. I was well inside the cut-offs, and I was going to enjoy the second half, because that was a big factor for me. And I just forgot about my pacing from then on, and it was just a case of keeping moving, sleeping when I need to, stopping when I had to, and I must admit I really enjoyed it from then, and just made sure that the last few hours were tough with my feet, with the blisters underneath. But for me, there was two halves of the race. The first half I kept to my pacing, and the second half I abandoned it, and it was all about just making sure I finished. But for you, Andy, we were together until pretty well Richmond. You left just a bit before, got there a little bit before me, but from then onwards you pushed on, and you finished in 77 hours 36:28, which was 48 hours faster than me from that point onwards. So just tell us a bit about how your pacing went on that second half.
It went well, actually. I was pretty happy. We still stuck together pretty much as a group, a bit looser in terms of we weren't, we'd spread out and then bunch back together with Rob and Russ and myself, and occasionally I'd get a bit ahead of them, and I'd have a bit of a rest while they caught up. But it still worked well as a team. We had a couple of little stops, and once we got through the line, when we got to line in, I had a good sleep of about 45 minutes, and I felt really refreshed after that. Russ was still asleep. Rob was heading out, and he sort of said, "Look, you want to do your own thing, go for your life," and I felt good, so I did my own thing, and I ran pretty solidly from there to the finish. I felt good, so I ran. Yeah,
I've just looked at. I'll put it on Facebook. I looked at all the results and did a spreadsheet, which gives people's time positions at the overall each checkpoint, and also their positions of that split. And you were second and third fastest of the whole field from Lying In to Glisdale, and Glisdale to Hawkstead, which tells its own stories, isn't it? The fact that you could finish so strongly, and it'd be interesting. We were saying if we could do one from Lying In to the end, and that overall one would be interesting. So I'll maybe do that at some point. But I think it just showed you how strongly you finished and how well you paced yourself.
Yeah, I felt good. So I made the most of it, and as I said, I was passing people, and that always makes you feel even better when you feel like you're getting somewhere. And I knew I was getting close to the end of the journey, so ran it, and in fact, towards the end there, coming around the coastal path, I thought someone was catching me, so I ran. I was running uphills. Turns out I was imagining it, but it was still great to be able to run it and finish after 77 hours.
Yeah. That last sort of 2.5-3 miles down the coast, that's part of the Cleveland Way.
Okay.
So I know that really well from doing the 110 and the 60, and it's amazing when you're running down that coast. I was in the pitch dark, so I didn't see it too well, but you finished about midday.
Yeah, about 3 in the afternoon. I actually stopped and got a couple of tourists to take a photo of me.
Okay, good.
So I got a photo.
Yeah. So you have to come back and do the one of the Hardmoors races, because you'll enjoy those. They're great.
They sound good.
Coast. Yeah,
they do sound good.
Yeah. So well done on your pacing. I think you certainly did well. I was thinking for mine, I wouldn't have changed much, I don't think, because I felt really comfortable until that halfway, and I'd like to think if I hadn't had the same issues with my feet, I think I would have been able to keep up with you.
Yeah, you were strong.
But I think the sleep, though, I think this thing with my lazy eye, I do need to get that sorted, because that is a hindrance. It was the same on the 160 when I had it for about 20-30 hours, just having to close one eye, and I wasn't prepared to do that this time. But I think if I can get that sorted, then maybe I could do better. But Yeah, it is what it is, and I think that's one of the things about the challenge, isn't it? It's not everything goes right, does it?
No.
And it's how you deal with those. And I'm proud of myself that I was able to deal with it and have a new focus, and then still finish.
Yeah.
Because it would have been easy to say, "Oh, well, I'm just going to stop now because this is not going well."
Yeah. And you still finished positively. That's important.
Oh, I did. Yeah,
you don't want to come away with a bad experience, and that's good.
Yeah. Okay. The next one I wrote down was sleep, because I think we've talked on it a little bit, but I think a race like this, that was for me, it was an extra thing to think about. When I did that 160 2 years ago, I didn't really have a sleep strategy, and I suffered because of that. I thought this one, I had a decent one, but it wasn't enough. And as I was saying, I think I realised I needed more sleep than that. I think the Kirby Stephen one was okay, and I probably wouldn't change that. I don't think I was ready to sleep at Patterdale after 45.
Early. Yeah, it's too early.
But by the time I got to Kirby Stephen, I was really keen for that checkpoint to come, and it was great having a shower. And I did have it, I did lay down for a good hour and a bit, and had a bit of I felt refreshed after that, and that climb up to 9 standards. But I wonder whether I would have been better having some sort of sleep at Keld before, because I was starting to tire then, and if I'd had a sleep before, my eyesight started going a bit funny. But again, that's hindsight, isn't it?
It is.
But certainly from Richmond onwards, I had more sleeps than you did, I think.
Yeah.
And I stopped at the pub at Ingleby Cross and had half an hour in the pub there, and then I stopped again another hour or two later, and I was sleeping in the woods, and then I slept on the Three Sisters for 10 minutes. So I had quite a few power naps, and I needed them. Because as soon as I sensed my sight starting to go a bit, I thought, no, I'm going to stop and just try and get on top of it. But because of that, I slept, maybe not 14 hours, but I certainly slept a fair bit more than you on that second half. But how did it go for you? Because I didn't get the impression you slept a lot.
I didn't. I added it up, and I reckon I actually slept about 3.5 hours across the whole 3 nights. Yeah. And I actually didn't really sleep in the first night. I had a bit of a...
at Kirby Stephen.
Yeah, when you guys all had a nap, I just sort of put my headphones on and listened to some...
Did you go into a tent, or...?
No.
You didn't even go in a tent?
No, I didn't go in a tent. The only time I went to a tent was at the Lion Inn. That's the only time I went to a tent, the whole race.
Yeah.
And even at Richmond, I didn't really have a sleep. I went out and laid on one of the park benches in the sun and put the headphones on for 20 minutes again. We had a nap when I was with Russ and Rob. We found it's an old disused like train carriage that was being used as a woodshed.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cute. We there was a door, an old door, and we laid that down. That became the base for us. We all put our head and shoulders on it because it was a bit of a mess in there.
Yeah.
And we lay down there for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and just went out, and that refreshed us. It was good.
Yeah. And we had that sleep at Reeth, didn't we?
Yes.
Because
that was important. That was my biggest sleep.
Yeah, we got into Reeth, and we were. Well, there's no way I could have carried on to Richmond. My eyesight was really poor then. And so we went into the cycle shop, and it was basically a corridor, wasn't it, leading into the toilets. And there was us 4, and Jim and Angela, and we just lay down on this floor, and we were there for a good 2 and a bit hours, weren't we?
Yeah.
It was about 5:15 we got up, but it was warm in there, wasn't it? It was out the wind, and I think we all needed it, didn't we?
I reckon I had a good couple of hours sleep there, and that was much needed recharge.
Yeah, it was quite funny after the race, wasn't it? Because you talk to people, and everyone had their own little war stories of where they slept, didn't they? And there was some weird and wonderful places where people found to sleep. I think John Steele and Phil, they slept at the garage at the A19 crossing, and they went round the back and found the air conditioning, which had a little bit of warmth from it, and they snuggled in behind and other people actually went, the guy let them in, and they just slept on the floor. They just slept on the floor in the shop. So I think my best one though was definitely Ingleby Cross, because I got in there about 10 o'clock at night, and they said, oh, one of your runners is upstairs, and Angela, they said she wasn't feeling too well, so they gave her a bed upstairs, so she had a nice bed in the hotel in the pub. And I just sat for about an hour, and they made me a hot chocolate, and they knew about the race, and I just fell asleep, and I woke about 5 to 11, and all the regulars were leaving, and I got ready and got out. But that was a really comfy one. That was the comfiest by far.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when you reflect on a race like this, the sleep strategy is a really vital one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was, again, interesting, different people's tactics. Martin Scott, I thought, was the most extreme, because he got into Richmond at about 4 in the morning and stayed there for 14 hours. he said, I'm going to have a day off. I feel good. I'm just going to. So he had breakfast there, he had lunch there, he had tea there, he had a sleep, he saw everyone come and going. And then he set off about 5:45, and he still finished ahead of me. You know, I don't think he slept from then onwards.
Yeah.
So basically, his tactic was 2 days of running, a day off, and day and a bit of running.
Yeah.
So it seemed to work for him.
I think flexibility is important.
Yeah.
I think it provided you factor that in, that you're going to need sleep and take it when you need it. I think.
Yeah, I don't think I'd quite appreciated the gap between checkpoints. I knew in my head there was, you know, I'd allocated 14, 16 hours, whatever. But in reality, that's a long time, isn't it? And I think the one from Richmond to Lion Inn, I ran quite a bit with that with Phil near the end. And it took us nearer 20 hours actually, and we were joking, saying that's longer than most ultra races we do, and that was just one leg. Yeah. So I think you do have to try and think about that, and what gear you take. I think I probably didn't have quite enough of. If it had been raining at night, I think I could have been in trouble. I was okay because it was dry. It was cold, but it was dry. I think I probably needed a bit more if it was wet. But again, I think I got away with it in some ways. And then the last one I put down was just thanks. And I wanted to thank James Thurlow, the race organizer, and every single marshal. They were just amazing, weren't they?
Great crew.
Yeah. Every checkpoint, they couldn't do enough for you. They were so keen to help you, to make sure that you had enough food, that you were looked after. They just went beyond, and not just for us, for every single runner, from the first one right to the last. And they just were so cheerful. You know, I was chatting to the folks at Richmond, and they were there for about best part of 3 days, from Ian going through the first one to the last one, and they were just as cheerful for the last one as they were for the first one, which says a lot about them as well. So a big thank you from us, wasn't it?
I was very impressed with the organisation. Very impressed.
Yeah. And also just the fellow runners. I think on a race this length, you get to know people and you're supporting each other. And even though it's a race, we're all in it together. And I think particularly the four of us that ran for that first, best part of 40 hours together, we became a good little team, didn't we? And we each had our strengths, and we each helped each other. Sometimes someone led, other times other people led. We all made decisions on navigation, didn't we? And we all chipped in and helped at different times. So I really felt no one was sort of being carried, were they?
No,
everyone was helping each other, and we chatting with different ones, and you got to know bits about different people. And then for me, I knew John Steele quite well anyway, so I saw John a few times. But it was great running with Phil into Lion Inn, so meeting with him. And I think you met some others as well, didn't you? And
I met a few people and some interesting characters, and I spent a lot of time with Rob and Russ, and ended up bunking down with Rob after the race as well. So I really enjoyed it. It was good fun.
And there was some of the same marshals were on the Cape Wrath as well, weren't they? So Stuart and a few others that you saw.
The media team went up to Cape Wrath, and so they were keeping an eye on me. I kind of put my head down when but I ran into Stu afterwards, and it was great.
So I think as we look back on the race, I'm just so glad I did it. I invested a lot of time and effort into the training and preparation, and I feel as though it paid off. And I would certainly recommend it to anybody. I think it's such a well organised race. It's a great route. It's challenging, and you've really got to prepare yourself for it. But it's one that I'm so glad that I've done, and I've got the medal. I highly agree. I'm going to go home and talk it up, because I think people would love it. Great way to see the country. Great way to meet new people. But it's just an epic journey. It was very rewarding. Okay, so what's next for you, Andy? What have you got planned for the rest of this year?
I'm off to Hard Rock in July.
Right, and that's your 5th time of doing it?
That'll be my 5th time. Wow. So hopefully if I finish that, then I'll be on the vets list, so that would be very nice. And then beyond that, my annual I've got an annual pilgrimage to a race I do every year in Australia called Great North Walk, and the entry's open next Monday actually, and then beyond that, I organise my own race. That will be in October, the 100 kilometre Great Ocean Walk. So, and then I'll be helping out in a series of other races across Australia. I go to help as a volunteer. So, big year.
Well, all the best for those, and I'll certainly be watching out for you at the Hard Rock and seeing how that goes. And for me, I've got my big race for next year is the Dragon's Back. Wow. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I wanted to do a stage race before that, cause I've never done that before. So I'm going to enter the Ring of Fire, which is a race around Anglesey in North Wales, and it's 35 miles on the Friday afternoon, 62 on the Saturday, and then 30 on the Sunday.
Wow. Okay.
So I was going to do it last year, but with my injury, I had to drop out before the race. And so I'm going to put my entry in for that one, and then that will be, I think, good preparation for the Dragon's Back.
Dragon's Back sounds really tough.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I'm 60 next year, so that was my present to myself and a challenge. I looked on the website. There's 500 entries.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a lot of people, isn't it?
That is a lot of people.
And again, it's the same company that did yours with the Cape Wrath, so they transport and they put a tented village up each night, don't they?
Yeah, but they're really well organised. They're very, very, very professional.
Yeah. I don't know how many actually end up on the start line, though.
No, I think a lot drop out before then.
Yeah, and I don't think they have a waiting list, so I think they just now say, right, you know, if they end up with 300 on the start line, that's the way. Yeah. But no, so I'll be doing some more of these vlogs as I prepare. Maybe not weekly from now on, but certainly I'll be doing some more.
I look forward to following your journey as you prepare for it.
Yes.
And then when you actually get out there, be able to follow your dot across the Welsh mountains.
Yeah, definitely. And have a safe journey home. You're heading back on Saturday.
I am, and thank you for your hospitality.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, it's been great to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.